All right. Excited for this episode of Success Mindset Podcast with Serene Thin Elk, Chief Behavioral Health Officer at Urban Indian, and Terry Liggins, at CEO and co-founder
Yes, sir.
of the Life Coach. I'm so excited to have you guys on this again. Obviously we do lots of work together, and I've just been excited about our partnership and our impact in this community. But I think you guys are two unique individuals that has a phenomenal perspective to add to this topic of success mindset, both in your personal experience as well as the work that we do together. So I want to hop in real quick. I just want to, for those who don't know you, Serene, why don't you tell a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I could feel the energy in the room right when I walked in. I love being with you too. So a little bit about me. I like to always say "Chante washe na pe chuzape," which is just a greeting that we always have when we, anytime that we're speaking in front of anyone. It's basically saying I'm coming today with a good heart and a handshake to you all. I'm enrolled in Hangtuan Lakota, which is known as Yankton Sioux tribe, and then my father is Sichangu Lakota. First and foremost, I'm a mother to my children. I have 7 children, not all biological, but I still take them on as my own. And we're just really passionate about helping people in general, and very specifically being born an Indigenous woman, working closely with helping our Native community.
Love it. Love it.
Beautiful.
Mr. Liggins.
Yes.
I mean, again, I don't think you need an introduction, but for those who surprisingly may not know who you are, I haven't seen you at a networking event or whatever the case, give them the privilege of introducing yourself.
Well, thank you, Tamien, for having me and Serene. I know we both were equally ecstatic just to be a part of what you're doing with this movement, and especially with this podcast, just talking about success. For me, I'm a native of Nebraska, but I've been in South Dakota now 18 years. So I got about half of my life growing up in Omaha in the inner city there, and then half of my life here in South Dakota. And I love it here in South Dakota. I'm a graduate of the University of South Dakota, went there for 8 years, studied criminal justice and leadership, and then I also studied nonprofit administration. As you mentioned, pretty popular person down there. I was our student body president. I was a high-performing athlete.
Nope. High-performing, give him to how many times state champion?
I was 6-time All-American, 12-time conference champion, and also won a national championship for the University of South Dakota.
A little context before we talk about success. We got to lay that groundwork.
Yeah, so go Yotes. And but I also engaged in leadership down there and got involved in student activities and presided over 5 different student groups. And so leadership has always been a thing that I was drawn to. And in the beginning, I didn't know that is what I was doing. I was just like having fun with friends and just bringing people together. That's what I enjoyed doing. What I come to find is that that's leadership, and that's influence, and that's diversity and equity and inclusion. And so now today, as the founder and CEO at Her Life Coach, I consult organizations on DE&I practices and trauma-informed care practices. But we also produce some group programming work to provide coaching, mentorship, and education support to ACEs impacted people, and I'm sure we might get into that, the adverse childhood experiences and what that means, but ACEs impacted people and justice impacted people. So our goal at Her Life is just to create safe spaces for ACEs impacted and justice impacted people.
I love it. Again, it's phenomenal work. I think we know there's an endless amount of folks that we're trying to help. There's not enough of us out there. And so again, the more that we can build up and lift up those around us, it's important stuff to help people say that you can too get there. Mm-hmm. But I want to start, one of the topics that we talk about in Leaders of Tomorrow is principle of exposure, that in which you're exposed to influences who you become. And I think knowing enough about both your backgrounds, same for me, I share the story oftentimes. I came up in a very average background, right? My parents loved me and knew that, but did instill in that, you can do anything. And so I think when you go back into your history, your childhood, the people you grow up around, statistically, I think all 3 of us aren't supposed to be where we're at necessarily from the environment you're in. Share some perspective on, what were some of the keys that has you here, that you climbed out of being a statistic on that side of it and are now a statistic on this side of saying, I found my way towards success. Mm-hmm. I climbed my way and we're always on the journey of continuing to evolve. Mm-hmm. But at this point, this is how I got here to climb out of these environments that I came from. What were a few of those key factors that got you here?
Yeah. When I think about my journey to where I'm at today, being a business owner, not having any business owners in my family, being a college graduate and being a first generation college student. A lot of my experiences have been new. And what I didn't have is a lot of guidance and mentorship when I was younger. And the guidance and mentorship that was there wasn't necessarily the best example based on the environment I grew up in, where there was drugs and violence and gangs in my home, in my family, in my community. What I saw for behavior, what is called sentimentality. And what it is when you do the wrong thing with the right intentions.
Yeah.
So, there were people who were, dealing drugs to help pay for the bills for their single mom. Or there were people who would steal from the store clothing or diapers for the children. And so for me, seeing people, justify the means for ends, but the means were in the gray area, that wired me to have that type of mindset, even though I was a person full of talent and personality and charisma. So, ultimately I paid the cost for that myself. And I ended up finding myself in the situation with the justice system and wondering how I got there. But I look back over my life, Tamien, and it was the exposure. That environment helped to wire what I thought was normal behavior. And once I got some help, I went through treatment, cognitive behavioral therapy. I did actually 800 hours of intensive cognitive reprogramming. And that certainly was a first step to unlocking, who I am today, is just getting exposed to mental health support. And then you double down that on, and for me, entering into a life of recovery and getting different types of mentors. So now today, the people who are in my life are people like yourself. You're a co-founder. I've got a great mentor and a community pillar here, Jack Marsh, and people like that who stand on integrity, honesty, consistency, character, candor. Now I have a different level of mentorship in my life, and now I'm able to kind of follow the right path, the right way. And so that's what's really unlocked it for me: mental health, recovery, and really getting the right mentors.
Love it. How about you, Serene? What are some of those keys for you that helped get you to a place where you're succeeding at this current space?
Well, my mind, I was thinking of all sorts of things when you asked the question and Terry's talking, and I'm thinking, man, there's so many different directions I could go with this. But I think if we're thinking about things in our life that helped us have resolve and focus, I think it's surrounding yourself with people when you're younger who are like good people, teachers that you can tell have empathy and actually care about you, and actually relying on that. I think a lot of people who have trauma or have broken attachment, there's this thing called attachment theory, which I won't get into, but basically if you have a rupture in your attachment at a young age, it's incredibly hard for you to trust people. You kind of always have your guard up. And so if there's like a piece of advice I would give to even adults, because a lot of adults struggle with this, but especially our youth, that yes, you have that wound, or maybe you were abandoned or you felt abandoned or something happened to you. You absolutely can recover through all of the small moments every day that you allow yourself to be nurtured by people who really do care. Because there are a lot of people that care. And when you are hurting and isolated and stuck in your own mind, it's incredibly easy to not even notice the good things in your environment or the people or the resources. And so I feel like a big part of my path here on earth is to be able to help people connect to the inner workings of themselves so that they can access this amazing, beautiful world around them. And yes, that world is full of really difficult things. It's full of war, as we're seeing now. It's full of covert and overt racism. It's full of a lot of things that we have to encounter. But I remember saying to my dad, I was always kind of a deep thinker. Even when I was a little girl, I think I was 4 or 5 years old. I remember looking up in the sky. My dad was smoking a cigar. We're out on the porch, and there was something going on in the world. And I remember I saw it on the news, and I came out and I was asking him about it. And I said, Dad, why are there so many bad things that can happen in the world? And then, took a puff of his cigar, and then he said, Yichungshi, which means my daughter, if you look up in the sky, this is just one place. We're here on earth, and there are so many limitless, amazing things that are happening in this very moment. And I think back to that moment sometimes because I'm naturally born anxious. If we talk about epigenetics, it's in my DNA. And then just being a sensitive person by nature. And so for me, I think when I think about like exposure and putting yourself, you have to be able to first be with yourself so that you can recognize the things around you that are actually really powerful and can help you get through your day at any given moment.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I've been hearing, again, my challenge with a lot of folks has this conversation of, just pick yourself up by your bootstraps. And Vonnie has a great saying of like, that's assuming they have boots and straps. Yeah. And if they did, they know how to use them, right? And as you see so many variables in terms of backgrounds, and I think there's a big lack. It's not only called lack of empathy, but you can't have full empathy without understanding. And we see a lot that people don't want to go to the depths of understanding and unpacking the background. And, you want that 18-year-old that's going through trouble just to make better decisions, but we have to go back to, you guys talk a lot about ACEs and those childhood traumas and how just the one incident at 5 years old can set them off on a trajectory that's different. Or, again, their life will be changed. We do this simple exercise in principle of exposure where we ask everyone to imagine how would your life be different if, and we give them different scenarios. And in that safe environment, everyone can engage in it because it's safe and I don't have to feel like I'm at fault for anything. We all know you remove or add one different person or one different circumstance and our life takes a different toll. So as you think about proximity, I think you were talking about some of that, in our background, how can folks start to reach for and grasp for some semblance of hope when it seems to be hopeless, right? When there's so many bad things that you can look at every single day, would you say, Serene, in terms of how do they sift through that to try to find just a ledge to hold on to?
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's a really pertinent question right now, right? I mean, I think that there's a lot of people, one, with the pandemic, that we have seen over at the clinic, we have seen an immense amount of depression, anxiety, grief. But on top of that, their own stuff that they're dealing with, suicide of their own children, just multiple deaths due to COVID. And we know that people of color are disproportionately impacted because of health disparities, access to resources. And we could go on and on about all of that. But in particular, I think there are times, if I'm being real about it, that as a provider and a person that I think people come to, which would include all of us, for that advice, right?
Yeah.
I think that it's so humbling because I could probably say something really beautiful at times. And sometimes I really feel that, right? And then there's times where I don't, where it's not that I'm hopeless, but where I'm like, you know what, I'm figuring this out too. Like, I think there's something about humanity and being human and especially as a helper and a person that people come to where you kind of, have to almost put that role or identity down and look within and say, I might have the right words, but like, am I living this? Right. And so again, for me, it always comes back to accessing those internal resources. And I know this is different for every person, but for me, it has always been a belief in something beyond myself. And so, for me, we say Wakantaka, Tunkashina, and it's the great mystery. That's the literal translation. We don't pretend to know exactly what's beyond, but we know there's something powerful beyond just our own thoughts and feelings. Because if you think about it, just the way you love like your children or the way you love people, that's unexplainable, right? I mean, you could break it down by science, but I think that this time is forcing us to go right back to the roots of the basics, in my opinion, the basics of what it means to be human.
Yeah.
And like, we're redefining what resilience is because we've never been in this situation before. And so I think for me, it's a balance of acknowledging like, hey, I'm in this with you. Like, I don't have all the answers, but guess what? Like when we're just present with each other, even if it's through conflict, having those tough conversations, which I've been having to have a lot of those with different people in my life that are struggling. We stay present to one another. To me, that's the only way, because when you're isolated, you can get lost in that abyss of depression, of grief. And so it's that balance of acknowledging this is where we're at and it's hard. Like, there's no other way to say it. This is hard. And in addition to that, we've gotten through stuff before, both individually and collectively. So let's put our minds together and figure out like, what's the next step?
Yeah, that's excellent. I think, in this world where we have, again, good and bad happening all the time, and it can be draining. because there's so much happening, right? And how do we start to create that separation? Obviously, there's power in reflection and learning from the past, but at some point we have to kind of shift into the hope for the future and what we're aspiring for. So my question to you, Terry, is share a little bit. Again, one thing I admire about you is that you're not afraid to tell your story. Actually, you're very proactive at telling your story. You don't run from it, but obviously that wasn't always the case. What if you can walk us back through kind of some of those pivotal moments of when you realize I am not defined by what happened to me, and when you started to gain hope? Because again, learning from the past is important, but being able to reach for the future and being the author of your life and creating your future of what's possible, because that you only can push so long. The real power is what you're being pulled towards. And that's one thing that I know. Terry's a guy who's going to show up for people, for the community, and it's because of that larger vision of what you're pulled towards. What was some of that pivotal mindset, if you would, success mindset in that moment, those beginning stages of lessening how much the past defined you and you were being pulled forward to greater possibilities ahead of you? Yeah,
that's a great question, and I can feel my emotion, even really just starting to stir in that, because to break free from what we can call stigma or statistics or other people's projections on your life takes a lot of that internal work that Serene's talking about. And I love that she spoke of spirituality, because that's certainly a guide for me, having faith and really being introduced to the word faith and what faith means. I remember way back when I was about 22 or 23 years old, when I first kind of got introduced to the word faith in a different way. I'm a believer, I believe in God, but as I was learning about who God is, what God is, this thing called faith was introduced to me. And it was told to me that it was believing in something that had not happened yet, but so much so that you were living in that victory in the present moment. And I was like, excuse me, say that to me again. What is faith? And the person said, it's believing in what has not yet happened and living in that victory in the present moment. And what I did at that point was envisioned myself winning the national championship. This was like 2 weeks before winning the national championship. I said, so I can go 2 weeks forward, believe it, the biggest, and that's faith. Yes. So for the next 2 weeks, I had won in my mind. I showed up at the national track meet. The first thing I did was went to the podium and stood on the top of it. And everyone looked around at me like I was out of my mind, which I was in my spirit. And I stood up there and I said, this is where I'm gonna be in 2 days. And fate would have it, and faith would have it. 2 days later, I won the national championship. And so, here's the ring I wear every day that reminds me of that moment. And that evidence at 22 years old demonstrated to me what faith could do. And so now, as I encountered more hurdles in my life, my faith fueled me. My faith always fueled me. So I was given visions on who I could be in the world, the type of community impact player I could be, the type of lives I can impact going back into community corrections. I'm a kid who went to juvenile detention. I was on juvenile probation. I was on house arrest. And I had a vision going into college that I would help those type of youth before. So despite whatever happens in my life, that vision is always there and the faith is always in it. So as I encounter more obstacles, I fall down, I look back up in faith. I scrape myself, I heal the wound, and I look forward in faith. And so my faith just keeps fueling me to believe in the visions that I've been given, either from people in my life, internal intuition. And so that's what just keeps me going. And now even today, that's one of our core beliefs at Hurdle Life is we have 5 beliefs. Belief number 5 is faith is fuel. And faith is believing in something that has not happened yet. So I got that confidence in what's coming for me. And I believe in a divine intervention in my life. And I believe I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And so kind of with what Serene said where do you find hope? Spirituality is such a big part of that. When you have a belief that there's something bigger than you working for you that you can tap into, that certainly can help you overcome anything.
Yeah, for those who heard that, I mean, put that on your plate, scoop it up, lick the plate, go back for seconds. There's so much power in that of visioning and seeing it before it happens. You have to have that faith. It's crazy that everyone gets it, that everything that was ever created started in the mind. You have to have a vision of it. And people get that. You have someone had to think about a computer before it happened. They had to think about this pen or my shirt before it actually was created, but yet don't spend the time to envision what they want for the future. 90% of people don't know what success means to them. Most people don't set goals. And so if you don't have a goal, Les Brown said that's a wandering generality. Who wants their life to be described as a wandering generality? But we have this thing in society where we celebrate the hero, we celebrate the Super Bowl champion, we celebrate all these different things, but success is not a secret. And we admire the person, but it's really the behaviors. Take the two top characteristics of that individual that you admire, and it's not the human being, it's the characteristic traits that they exhibit, which is available to all of us to develop. So let me ask you that, Terry. Obviously being a national champion, there's a mindset that you have to be at that level, to be elite, right? Most people, why I challenge that when I do training oftentimes is, we think of elite, Olympic medalists, all these different things, but very rarely do people sit back and say, what would it mean to be elite at my job or my role and my position? Share some of those characteristic traits, maybe of the mindset when you were an athlete that you've now carried with you in transition and you leverage today. What are those a couple characteristic traits that serve you well today, where you're still sprinting and having these next levels of success in this current national championship of your life?
Nice. Yeah. There's quite a bit. As an athlete, you go through a ton of coaching and competing and those different type of things. But when I think about some of the stuff that really I'm obsessed with, one of those things is preparation, right? In order to compete well, you have to practice well. And when you get a appreciation for the practice, when you get an appreciation for the prep, when you recognize the value and the purpose of the prep and the practice, now you engage in that with so much more understanding versus being begrudged that I'm doing a dry run of this situation. Like when I do conference speaking, the first time, it may be the first time you're hearing it, but it's not the first time that I've practiced it, that I've said it. I have these conversations with my circle of advisors, and we dialogue on it, and I shape and I craft and I build my presentations. I don't just show up and say whatever is on my mind at that time. I've put in hours and hours and hours and hours of preparation to perform at that high level. And so that's something that I think people don't understand. It's not luck. It's preparation meeting opportunity. And so that commitment to preparation is something that I still carry today. The understanding of the value of practice, right? Because you can think that this is not important, as like AI said back in the day, just practice, but it is so much more. It's preparation. It's preparation for the opportunity. And so, that's something that I definitely keep and hold on to. I think also it's just the desire to be excellent. For me and my mindset, excellence is the only standard. And I know when I say that, I make people uncomfortable, but I hope to inspire people with that excellence is the beginning and the end of all performance goals. There is no other bar.
Why not?
And so now when you operate with excellence in mind, that drives the type of attitude you bring to it. That drives the type of effort you bring into it. And it also drives this inclusion to invite other people to come along with you, because nothing great in life was ever achieved alone. So now I got to also have a teamwork mentality, teamwork making the dream work mentality. And so those are the type of things that really keep me going. Surrounding myself with a good team of people that are equipped in areas that I am not. Because if I have a good team, I can do great things. As I strive for excellence, commitment to preparation and practice, and that's what leads to high performance.
I love it. I was just, I think it was just yesterday, I was listening to some John Maxwell stuff, and he was sharing one of his favorite stories from his mentor, John Wooden, 10-time national champion, probably the greatest coach of all time in college football. And he had asked him, once he had retired, what do you miss about the game? And he said, practice. 10 national championships, all the games, your favorite part that you missed was practice. He said, yeah. He said, because the work happens in practice. When I showed up in the game, it's all execution. We did the work or we didn't. Again, we lost because we didn't prepare properly, right? And so that just resonates so high with me of daily work is practice. How you show up on a normal Thursday is practice for winning at life. So I love that.
Yeah.
Serene, something I admire of you is how much you give and you have to balance. That's a big topic for people, work-life balance. 7 kids, no easy feat. Also, obviously look to in a lot of ways in terms of the work that you do. So you're literally getting pulled. I have just the highest admiration for working women, because even when you're a good dad, like, let's be honest, like, dads still get to come home and don't typically have as much responsibility. It often falls more on that. So again, I admire at the highest level that. But 7 kids, obviously no easy feat. How do you view balance and success through that? What does success look like? Because again, it's not about giving one to the other, but it is that fine dance. How do you approach that to make sure that you're successful not only in all the hats that you wear, but also in what you're exempling for those coming behind you?
I love this question.
Yeah.
Because I haven't asked myself this question in a long time. So it's really good. I just want to say, like, I'm sitting here and I'm big on being present, right? Like, and noticing the good things when they happen, because those consolidate over time to boost your mood and connection. And I'm sitting here at this table with 2 people I consider good friends, amazing professionals, and I'm like taking in all of this information, and it's totally like spirit food, right? Like it's feeding me. And just to hear you talk about your definition of faith, living as if it's already happening, I'm like, it's such a good reminder. So in terms of balance, I think it's a conversation that, and I appreciate you saying that. I think it is typically different for a lot of women, especially women who are working full time or working 2 jobs and have kids. There's something called the mental load, right? Which in our household, I definitely carry the mental load. And so it's all of the details that every child needs. So, I have 4 children at home. The other 3 are older and, live somewhere else, but they still stay on my mind.
Yep.
But with the 4 little ones, it's every little thing for each one of them.
Yeah.
It's all of the school things. It's all of the emotional things. So you might have a span of 3.5 hours when you get home from a long, tough day, where maybe you had to have hard conversations, personnel issues, you're behind on reports, and you have your own personal stuff, and then you have all your babies and everything that they have. And so finding that space to be able to create and be as present as you can when you're home, and recognizing that all of that stuff that led up to this moment of me feeling drained, I have to be very conscious. And for me, it's about ritual. And so every day that I get home, and I've done this since I started my career, I go home, I go in everyone knows this is what mom's going to go in the room. She's going to get in her pajamas, and then she's ready to enter into the home space, something very small. But I have to physically take off my work clothes. I smudge too, which in our way is a way of kind of cleansing and just giving away the things that don't really serve us, right? And so when I come out and I feel physically comfortable, and everyone knows, like, mom's kind of entered in the space to cook dinner and do different things. And so I think it's about, again, mindfulness, being very intentional about things. And your supports. I'm telling you, if I didn't have my sisters, like my biological sisters and my friend sisters, we rely on each other every single day. We have group messages. We have, at the drop of a dime, hey guys, I'm having a hard time. I'm really struggling. Let me call here. I get phone calls, right? I mean, that sisterhood, healthy people in your life that can relate to what you're going through. And as women, I feel like we really recognize that not to say men don't have huge hearts and all of that, but we physically carry our children in our bodies. We bring them into the world.
Shout out to women.
And I think that bond that we have with them, in addition to our passions professionally, there's no easy answer to that question, but yet we're doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like, we find ourselves in these spaces. So I think just reconnecting to the passions of what brings you in the field. I will never leave my work because I love my work. So no matter how hard my personal life is, my work is a part of my purpose. And so I think always connecting to the why. Like, why am I doing this work? And the why is easy at home, right? That's easy. You know why you're doing that. But sometimes when you get burnt out at work, I think asking yourself and reconnecting to the why, and healthy boundaries, there's so much more to say, but that's the gist of it.
That's phenomenal. I think, again, I hope people hear that, really evaluate their 168 hours and find your slivers. Find that time for you. You know, we teach a better you is better for everybody. And it's crazy how many people just transition from one environment to the next without creating space. I love that, create space, because it's a mind shift. If you can set your mind to these certain things, it puts you in the right frame to be successful in that next segment. I call it segment intending. What's my next intention for this next segment of my day? I have a gentleman that I coach. He literally brings a pair of shoes and a home sweatshirt to the office, and Mr. Rogers, he changes his shoes. He puts on a different sweatshirt to put himself, okay, I'm no longer the boss, CEO. I am now dad and husband. And then he asks himself again, what kind of day did I have? If it was a good day, he takes the interstate to get home and carry that good energy into the home. If it's a little bit of challenging, he created a different route. And along that route, routines, it triggers him to be more grateful, and it just puts him in a different mood. Most people just get home, and again, be aware of when you're driving home, the people that are coming home from work all around us are exhausted and drained, and life happens, but how can you create space to just switch your mindset, be present in the support system? Oh my gosh, like, get a support system. No, not enough people do that, but having that is amazing. It's amazing. I want to switch real quick topic, the work that we do together. This is honestly probably one of the favorite things that we get to do. I have the privilege of doing is the work that we get to do with you guys and Leaders of Tomorrow, Justice Impacted. I want to get both of your guys' perspectives, kind of two sides to the coin. One would be, I'll probably ask this one to you, Terry, is, we see this group, and again, when society wants to have whatever view that they would have, for whatever reason, of justice involved, this group and their hunger is beyond explainable. And it's amazing, and it's invigorating. We had a class Tuesday night, again, I'm up at 4 a.m, teach until 7:38, and my energy was here because you're feeding off it. What would you say is maybe some of the misunderstood things in that space of individuals who have been justice involved, their mindset, the things that they're going through, things that maybe that society should know or needs to know about this population, and what would be needed to help? Because we need to be advocates in this space. That what could we do to help come alongside and the support system, provide a greater level of support system for individuals who maybe have had this lived experience?
Yeah. I can tell you I'm looking forward to Serene's answer on this too, because we learn so much from each other and we feed off each other so well. So I just can't wait to hear what you have to say too. But I'll lean in to say that one thing I don't know if people truly understand, and it's because you a lack of empathy to this or an experience with this, being justice involved, is the level of deprivation that you have just endured from being an incarcerated person. I've been incarcerated as a youth and as an adult. I know what it feels like, the limitations that are placed upon you as an incarcerated person. The amount of time that is spent with your family, it's sucked down to 15-minute phone calls. The visitation schedule is set up in a way where it's systematic and you don't have control over that. It's determined when you can have visitation. And so for me in my environment, it was like an every 3-week thing. Who people want to see their family every day and to perpetuity. But what type of reality lays upon you when you're limited to 15-minute phone calls every 3 weeks for 2 hours at a time. You don't choose your clothes. Your clothes are provided for you. You don't choose your food. Your food is provided for you. So this environment of being incarcerated is so deprivating that when you release, there is such a thirst. There's such a hunger. There's such a desire to get back what you haven't had for that term period. Mm-hmm. Now imagine the different lengths of term. 3 years of incarceration, 6 years, 10 years, 15 years of incarceration, of deprivation. So when they release, there's such, what I'm envisioning is the bow and arrow. Mm-hmm. And how when you draw it back, all the tension that goes way back here. But the more it draws back and the more tension, and I remind people, I coach of this, like, it's okay. You feel that pressure. Yeah, it's hard. This is a lot on you. But when it releases, based on the amount of pressure that was there, determines how far it's going to go. There's so much potential from that pressure. So when we as a community and a society can recognize the potential and the opportunity to harness that incarceration experience and then surround that person with the right people and resources and mindset to help them use that desire and that thirst to regain and recover back which was lost, but now also equipping them with what they didn't have to handle it well. Mm-hmm. Because there's no denying that there was a failure, or there was a falling, or there was a crime that was committed. And that's a mindset thing too. So we can't just give them opportunity. We have to give them mindset too, mm-hmm. and teach them how to do the right thing the right way, not justify the means through the ends type of deal. But what I think people don't understand is that deprivation that the justice involved person goes through. And when they return, they are so thirsty and eager to recover that which was lost or diminished during that time.
No, I love that. So coming off that, I'm going to add one caveat for you, Serene, and that is you talked about the obstacles, the mental blockages, the things that they've come from. And I think this actually relates just to everybody. We all have our stuff, mm-hmm. right? Why is that so important for people to deal with their stuff? Because if not, it's going to be a hindrance. And so many people just through willpower and try to lie to themselves and it doesn't matter. Why is it so important for people? If you really want to have success, it will not come independent of dealing with that, getting it up and out, because otherwise it's sitting in there and it's holding people back. Why is that so important? Is maybe what is a couple steps that people can even start to do to get to that place of allowing some of that trauma to come out so they can step forward into success in their life?
Yeah, so I think that anytime people are coming out of a situation of deprivation like that, when you're in a confined setting, it's a totally different mode of survival, I think. And then when you get out, it's a really crucial time, I think, right when you get out. I often talk about my brother, and I'll use him to answer this question because I always bring him into the conversation because he and I were going to work together for the rest of our lives. And, he died young. But one of the things that I recognize is when he was first released from prison, he still carried a lot of shame from his trauma that he was never able to resolve and would only talk about when he was drunk and would cry. And I remember those moments with my brother. It was a journey, and seeing him when he got out. My brother was charismatic and handsome and so smart, and like everyone loved this man when they met him. And so the plan was always he's going to be the leader and I'm going to be his sidekick, right? And so now I can hear him from heaven or spirit world being like, no. Plot twist, like you're the leader and I'm helping you from the other side, And I think one of the things that I think he would want to talk about is shame and how we are defined as people by society in different ways, right? So whether you're a Black man, a Native man, a person of color, a woman who's Native women are dehumanized at more rates than any other race in this country, like whatever it is that the external society kind of puts on you, in addition, your own individual traumas, if you don't work through those, it is going to be a detriment. So the thing I know is we need safety. And for anyone to start healing from any kind of trauma or rupture in trust or anything is to feel safe. And so we have to create safe environments. So obviously, because I'm a behavioral health therapist, I believe in the power of individual therapy, family therapy, group therapy. But as time has gone on, I have seen, honestly, like the quickest change and transformation in community settings.
Yeah.
So this is why with Leaders of Tomorrow, I have seen where you aren't directly saying, you know what, you have all these issues, that you're just saying, hey, we recognize that you're coming with a different set of needs and gifts being justice impacted. And let's put you through this leadership course. And to hear so many of those women say, never have I ever been told I was a leader or that I could be a leader.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really good.
It just, it hits you that, man, like this is how we're limiting and not encouraging. And so I think to just have this, it's like co-ed, right? Men and women, whatever race you are, whatever age, you know, if you're of age to enter the program, come on, let's do this. Like, you all have something inside of you that maybe no one has ever told you you had, or you've never allowed yourself to fully like come into your own power, right? And so it's been, I believe, a lot in parallel process. And so in watching so many of these people share their stories and become sober and say, I never want to go back. And, you know, all these things that Leaders of Tomorrow has brought, I've witnessed myself as well, like allow myself to think of myself as a leader in a different way. And just conversations with both of you and with Vonnie kind of, in some ways challenging me to look beyond what comes easy to me, you know, and to be intentional and to use my voice and not be scared to. So how can, it's like power of like, I don't know if it's osmosis or what, but like, I feel like being principle of exposure, like being around this like healthy male energy, which is not something I've had a lot in my life, right? People with good boundaries, people who are professionals, like that's one thing when I talk about Leaders of Tomorrow and Think 3D, I'm like, they have such good boundaries. They're so professional. They're good at what they do. And in the Native community, especially, to know that there's healthy men and professionals who really do just want to help, right? Like, it's like, we really do just want to help people reach their goals and their potential. So I think the first thing is recognizing that shame is always very present, but creating safe spaces. And the more and more I do this work, the more I recognize, I think the community-based circles and you know, things like Leaders of Tomorrow, those are the things that give people skills and belief in themselves.
Yeah, I love it. I think, you know, studying success, one of my favorite books is Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and one of the 13 principles that he highlighted that was a commonality amongst the most successful people was mastermind groups. And the power of a mastermind group really comes down to the individuals who are committed to being better themselves and are there for each other. And so again, this community that's being built around Leaders of Tomorrow or other individuals, even us here, we have an energy because we genuinely care. We're aspiring to be better of ourselves. And that's kind of the whole semblance of what Success Mindset podcast is about. Hearing stories, hearing perspectives, because everybody can grab on to something higher, and you can hear something that one of us said and unlocked it. More is possible, right? Which is fantastic. And so last, I always finish off my guests with one of our cube conversation cards. So I'm going to throw you a curveball here. So I'll give each one of you a question. I'll just grab a random one out of here. Whoever wants to have this one, you first come, first serve. How are you pursuing the things you love?
You know,
You started, you got to go there.
yeah, well, so where I'm at with that is that I feel like that's almost a moving target too, because you can just fall in love with new things, and like, you know, you got long-standing things that, like, I enjoy connecting with people. I love connecting with people. I love making an impact. But like right now in my current season, one thing I'm falling in love with is moving at a new pace. I'm in a season in my life where I'm removing the sense of urgency over my life. You know, I have been under a sense of urgency for quite some time in my recovery and in my reentry. And a few times I've felt the impact of that in my body and in my mind. And after my last kind of like crash, I'm like, and evaluating this pace that I'm moving at. And I'm falling in love with the pace in which I'm now adopting, which is without a sense of urgency. There's things that are important, but none of it is urgent. I'm allowing things to be in flow. That's my word of the year, to be in flow with me, to be in alignment. And I'm falling in love with that. And I think when you ask the question about like, how are you going about it? It's with intention, Tamien. It's constantly telling everyone around me what I'm doing, what my new commitment is, because I'm coaching and confirming it to myself, but I'm also inviting accountability. I know when I speak it to the people around me, I'm inviting that accountability to it as well. So that's why I mention it openly on the podcast to two of my accountability friends and partners. Pace, ease, working on wellness. You know what? There's another thing for me this year. I don't have income goal. I don't have an income goal this year. Wellness goals only. I am not pursuing a dollar amount. I'm not looking to hit a benchmark of this is how much money I made and now that makes me successful.
Yeah.
Many people fall into that. I was entering this year wanting to make more money than I did last year. I've eliminated it within the first 2 months of this year, realizing that that's not the aim. That's not the goal. I'm not moving that fast towards money. I don't have an income goal this year. Wellness goals only. And so I'm actually making a commitment in my recovery to do bottom-up work, body work. I've been really in my head the last 3-4 years. I celebrate 4 years of sobriety from alcohol, 6 years of sobriety from my drug of choice. And my mindset is good, but my body has been neglected. And so now this year, I'm going to do bottom-up work. I'm going to look into the EMDR. There's some trauma release exercises to get into. And I'm just going to take care of me and be well and not move with urgency and only have wellness. And I'm falling in love with that, and I'm using intention to do it.
I love it, man. You've locked and loaded. You should have jumped on that a little quicker. All right, well, now you don't have a chance because now whatever it is, you got to throw it. Grab this one. Okay, I like this one. What would you do differently if you knew nobody would judge you?
Oh my God.
Glad I didn't get that. I'm glad I didn't get that one.
Grab the first
I
one.
didn't get that one.
Oh my gosh. Everything. Everything.
Yeah.
Serious. I think, I mean, it's being a little dramatic, right? But this is a part of, I think me like becoming more of who I actually am. This sounds so cliche, but my true authentic self. I think in collective societies, often like in native, tribally, intertribally, just indigenous in general, we have been through hell and back, right? The trauma we've experienced has very often with trauma, it's like black or white thinking. You're either good or you're bad. It's all or nothing. And I think because we have survived and endured so much, there is a lot of you have to be this way if you're a good relative, or you're not helping, right? You're not doing the right thing. And so I get the sense of urgency to do that. Like we need to change, all of these really difficult things that we're going through as a people. But I think in that process, again, there's a lot of indirect or inadvertent shaming, sometimes very direct shaming.
Yeah.
I've experienced that as a woman. I'm a native flute player, and I got quote unquote permission from people in my life who I really respected, who said, it's okay, it's a gift you have. But I stopped playing the flute for 10 years because I would have older native men come up to me and tell me traditionally women are not supposed to touch the flute. This is what the flute is for, right? And then I'd have my kunshi, my grandma say, whatever. She's like, no, the love flute, like in essence, like you love what you're doing. This is your gift, right? And I think so the conditioning of being a native person and then also coming up in a family that everyone looked to for everything all the time. Spiritual leader, my mom was revered for her teaching and her language. Our family was under a microscope. And it was a privilege, to be able to work with people. But at the same time, it really shaped my mind, being the quote unquote hero of the family, to make sure everything looked good all the time, right? Like I didn't know that was my role, but I sure stepped into it. And so that followed me as an adult of not taking risks, not being who I truly am. And so over the past couple of years, I've really allowed myself to be maybe not accepted or liked by some people because I might say something they don't agree with, or it challenges this narrative of what it means to be a healthy Native person, you know? So I could say a lot more, but I think I would, if people weren't judging and I'm stepping out of that, right?
Yeah.
It's a process.
Yes.
And with change, often the pendulum swings the other way, and I'm trying to not do that, right? Where you're like, I've been in this box and woo, like I'm just gonna go crazy. But finding that middle ground where I'm allowing myself to just really assess, like, am I, what's holding me back? Is it truly me like thinking through this, or is it the external pressure that I have always felt, which has now become internalized? So I don't even need anyone to put pressure on me anymore. Like, it's just within me, right? And so I have to check myself a lot in that area. So.
I heard this the other day, if you live for others' acknowledgement, you would die by their rejection. And I was like, how much people's lives is because of other people's expectations? And that was last year. That was a big step for me, so I can relate, because that was my freedom point of I'm free of other people's expectations. It's my life. In my life, the way I do it, I'm going to do all these great things, but I can't define my life by your expectations. So excellent conversation. Again, I think that was phenomenal. Again, gift. I'm again honored that you guys were able to pop in with us and share your perspective on the success mindset. So thank you to you both.
Thank you, Tamien. Appreciate for having us.
See you guys next time.